Good morning. I was just in the shower and it arose in heart's eye that one of the reasons why I want to create some kind of coaching thing or be a coach of sorts of people stuck in the mental health system is because what came to me was currently I work in peer support and it's about listening and allowing a person to discover things for themselves. And this is really valuable. But I feel like since all of us who have been so indoctrinated into the system for so long, what we're going to discover as solutions and things we want to work on and goals are largely limited to the way we've been programmed to think about ourselves. So there aren't outroads in that. There aren't people thinking that they can really move beyond all of that. So I feel like I want to point that out and point some ways out that are possible. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But I feel like we're so deeply conditioned to stay within that framework that we're going to get stuck there. We are stuck there, and there are other ways and solutions. So I do want to be able to point out solutions, and that's not really the role of a peer support worker. So I do want a different role. I don't want to listen to people's sad stories and not be able to say, hey, I don't take any of that stuff anymore, and this is how I did it, blah, blah, blah. I'm feeling a lot of energy this morning, and I was jumping on my trampoline, and I was listening to David Darrell's Freeloader song, a remix, and when I was bouncing, I was doing this glide conductor thing and feeling the energy, and then as the energy increased, I saw a vision of a person in my mind, and I sent that energy out to them with a gesture, like, whoo, send it to them. And I did that for several people, and that's definitely something a manic would do. This extra energy is meant to be shared. It's meant to be made relational and creational. It's not meant to be kept for the self. There is no self. This energy explodes the self, and then the energy's there. It's the negation of the self. So, yeah, lots more to talk about. I'll get to it later. I wanted to say that a little differently, that first part. I don't know what I wanted to say, but I'm not okay with sitting by and knowing there are ways out and not sharing that. And maybe that's within a peer role, but not really. Time to make a smoothie. It's a sign from the Blended Blender. 11:11. This morning I was feeling all celebratory, and then when I was driving to work, felt really First, my credit card wouldn't work at the gas pump, and then it wouldn't work at the next gas station, so I used a different one. And then I was driving behind this really smelly pickup truck. I hate that smell when trucks stink, like pollution. And I was thinking, well, what is this all about? And pondering how maybe it was going to this peer support shift or something, but I think it's more PMS day. It's that one day where I feel super like, grr. So I'm gonna go with that and not do anything too drastic. And I may have to ban myself from reading tweets again because I read one last night and I read the link to it, and then I started writing this email to the person, and it ended up really long and sort of grr by the end. And I didn't send it, which was smart, but I'll probably read it to myself just to read it and show myself the amount of information and meaning creation that can happen from reading a small amount of information about what other people are doing. And it could be kind of distracting because I can create meaning and context and response all day long. And I'm supposed to be moving in what I'm creating. And there are two things that I am needing to write, yet I end up writing this big long thing regarding something else, and I haven't written those 2 things that I'm supposed to write for people. So, yeah. And this morning when I was bouncing on my trampoline and feeling all happy, I was tapping into my DJ possible self. I feel these possible selves and these possible trajectories. And then going to a shift in peer support, feeling like I really want to leave this behind. It feels like being silent. It feels like I can't speak up. And it's partly true because then I'm working and I can't talk to myself when I want if I feel like it. So it's again this movement of, I don't know what I'm talking about, but it just feels wrong to me today for sure. But perhaps today is the day of the month where anything would feel wrong. I feel like I want to make juice. I feel like, I don't know. So I work for a bit and then I might go to Valley Village and get a costume for the Boney M concert, or look for a costume just for fun because it's Halloween season, and it's not for Halloween but for some of the crazy, happy, magical backpack stuff. Sitting by the river with my sushi again. It's so good. This is why I need to continue fasting from tweets, because I read a tweet and I read the article to go with the tweet, and it's a short article, but for some reason I started writing an email to the researchers who are creating this study on bipolar disorder and creativity. And a bit on what it says. It's the CREST BD study, blah blah blah, whatever. It says people with bipolar disorder and their family members are more likely to be creative than the general public. Less is known as to why this may be. I'm going to say this fast. So they want to better understand the links between bipolar disorder and creativity. And they're saying motivation can help explain the higher levels of creativity often observed in people living with bipolar disorder. More specifically, we will focus on understanding people's responses to potential rewards. Our earlier work has suggested that people with bipolar disorder tend to display higher levels of investment in earning rewards in life, and this appears to be associated with higher levels of creative accomplishment. Note the words reward and accomplishment. We will use new tools from neurocognitive science to assess whether people with bipolar disorder are willing to work harder for potential rewards, and whether people with bipolar disorder tend to spend more time exploring novel options than sticking with familiar ones as they move towards a goal. Our group is excited to bring together experts with different perspectives to help better understand the links between creativity and bipolar disorder. For example, if it is seen that people with bipolar disorder may display a greater willingness to work harder for rewards, such behaviors could then be tracked to improve treatments and outcomes. The team hopes to share insights, blah, 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 and then it gives the contact. And the wording of this study bothered me indeed. And I was writing a little email, and it started off tame enough, but then I got into, I don't know what the flavor is, but I kind of want to read it now and put it out there and be done with it, because I don't want to read these studies and things and be compelled to write this sort of stuff. Tomorrow is a milestone day, so I want to read this before the milestone day because I want to get on with celebrating life. So I wrote, I was labeled with bipolar 6 years ago and have been deeply in touch with learning and exploring the energy of creativity experientially and by creating with it. Learning by creating is the most powerful way to learn. I would like to point out that the creative state is innately rewarding and fulfilling within itself. I don't feel there is an outside reward like Pavlov's dog. It's not a doing to get a reward, but the doing is creative, thus rewarding, as it's ever new. Creativity is something so new that the self doesn't even know what it's going to create. How then can it wish for a reward from which it doesn't even know will manifest? The reward is the selfless state, reward in quotes, which is seeing possibilities without the past interfering. Trendy circles call it flow, peak experience, etc. Yet if one comes out of it with some sense of self intact, one won't be labeled mentally ill for life. It is the seeing with fresh eyes, the exploration. It is a completely new algorithm in the brain, without reference to what we are programmed and conditioned to believe is rewarding through our education, family, media, etc. The brain is not wasting energy on reward and punishment, hence it has energy to create. If you have particular rewards in mind that you feel people with bipolar will work harder to get, you will find that. But it is much more vast than anything you could conjure up if you do not have that capacity yourself. The brain can work harder, in quotes, as it has more energy when it is not seeking rewards, but creating with a total unwasted energy. I've explored this deeply and found many hacks and viruses to the creativity algorithm. One of the worst viruses is being hypnotized into believing we are mentally ill. The trouble is, creativity has nothing to do with the self, yet we are diagnosed with a mental illness as a personal problem of a separate self, which is an epiphenomenon, an abstraction apart from the moment now. Living life as having a big problem with the self, which doesn't exist in the first place, and when it isn't in operation, creativity is one of the biggest blocks to creativity. It's all semantics. Children are the most creative when they are not yet saturated with all the program rewards and punishments that we force feed them disguised as love. As adults, being so full of reward and punishment ourselves, we can hardly imagine a state where that doesn't operate, and thus frame our science based on that, and thus put a tether on those minds that are making spontaneous attempts to break free. I assure you, it has nothing to do with reward. In reward implies the opposite, punishment. And what has punishment to do with creativity? Our brains are working harder at something indeed, but it won't be seen from the level of science. Quantum physics is getting close, but it's assuming that it's discovering something new, as if the universe hasn't always worked that way, and we couldn't calculate it. We create the way the world works with what we create. Look at what has been created as the way the world is for people who get labeled with mental illnesses. Look at what we are reduced to that spawns all your science. Our problems won't be solved by the same level of thought that created them. As Einstein said, science won't solve the problem of bipolar, as it has created the story of bipolar. Creativity, in its true sense, is the solution to our problems. No matter what you do, you won't be able to box it up and sell it back to us as treatment. Why have you forgotten your childlike creativity? So the wording in your study is incorrect. It's from an outside observer looking in and projecting the way its brain works onto the way the so-called bipolar brain is working, thus limiting it. Creativity is unlimited. Nothing to do with reward and punishment, yet it seems like it does because we are indeed punished for our new ways of operating. We are medicalized and marginalized. It's interesting how the mental health field is eons behind all the other sciences that say there is no self, no limits to the brain neuroplasticity, etc. Yet, we branded with mental illnesses or defective selves that need to be sold back our capacities after having them medicated away as our brains literally shrink and shrivel up. Look at what we are doing to the human brain and how the human brain is retaliating at all levels. Put away your microscope and zoom out to 30,000 feet. See through the eyes of a bird. Look at it and calculate in a single second its entire existence and interrelation and connection to everything else. We have that capacity. That is part of creativity, to understand the relatedness in flash. Put away your science and look with your own eyes and heart. See what is going on in the world, and maybe you'll have a clue as to what gets us to work harder. This emphasis on our supposed personal mental illness detracts us from the wholeness of life that we see, move with, and create based on. It gets us back into the algorithm that most of the world operates based on, to waste energy trying to solve the problems of the self, a self that is nowhere to be found. We'd like to tell you that there is no self, that we're all one consciousness and humanity, but you won't listen. If you would listen, we'd have many things to share with you. Stop studying us and have open dialogue with us, where we share and create new meaning together. In this way, we can share in the creativity as it is not personal. It's impersonal. But if you meet me as if I'm a person with a personal problem and you're a person that is going to help me solve them, you create me as I am. You create me as you perceive me, as you project your images onto me. The creative state is vulnerable, innocent. If you tell a child over and over that they are stupid, they will become stupid. Don't tell us we are mentally ill and you are going to help us in treatment with our creativity. We are creative non-selves. Look hard for yourself and you won't find it, not with your fanciest microscope. And if you look in this way, you may stumble on a creative way of looking. A looking, not knowing, as you can't find that thing that thinks it accumulates what it knows. The self is all your knowledge, and thus it is not creative. You can rearrange knowledge, but it is not creative. Did you ever think to ask us how it feels to be so creative without pathologizing us? Did you ever think to ask us what we feel this creativity is all about from our own perspective? Did you ever ask us what we want to create? Did you ever ask us what we would create as our life? You might find us to have an immense altruism and many other capacities and dimensions. What you call illness might be much richer than you think, if you could only see creatively. So of course I didn't send that, and after writing about half of it, I realized I wasn't going to send it. And I also realized that looking at these tweets and things creates a lot of context and content that wells up and arises in me. And I don't know how much I want to look at that anymore, and I keep saying that to myself. And when I was driving today, I was thinking, maybe I'll set a new possible date for moving on from this mental health stuff. I'm doing a little bit more work in mental health, and I want to go to that cognitive remediation conference to see what they're saying about us and our brain shrinkage due to mental illness, which is a load of crap. And then I want to go to that CBT and psychosis workshop that seems really good, and I can only go to one day of it because I start my self-employment class. So the first and only day I can go to that second workshop, November 6th, maybe that can be my new potential goal for not focusing on this stuff at all. And not that I won't bring it up at all, but maybe I'll get rid of everything on any of my Twitter things that I barely use anyway that relate to mental illness. And sometimes I click on what Natasha Tracy writes about bipolar, and I find it really sad. I think it paints a really bleak and grim picture. And she herself says we shouldn't compare whose bipolar is better or worse. So I don't want to say mine's better and hers is worse, but whatever. It's just really sad. I feel bad that she's suffering that much and wants to write about it and give that impression that it's like that for everyone, because it's not. And it can be that bad for sure, but it's not that bad for everyone. So, yeah. So yeah, maybe November 6th, I will not talk so much about it. And that's when I'm starting that self-employment class, and I want it to be about magic and fun. And today I went to Value Village and I bought some fun stuff. Maybe I'll share some of it tomorrow because it's a bit of a milestone day and it's late and I am needing to write 2 things for 2 different people that I said I would, and then I look at a tweet and I spend an hour writing that. So that's my point, is I could look at some things that will create a download, an expansion in context and a creative movement towards those elements that I want to create. And part of it is the self-employment thing and thinking about that. That's creating something that I want to move into, and it's challenging. Whereas looking at a little bit that someone writes, because of the whole gravity and momentum of the last 6 years, it's easy for me to look at that and make a big calculation based on all that I've seen and experienced through personal experience in the mental health system, what I've seen in others, being able to transcend, so knowing all that stuff isn't true 100%, it creates this big blah. And I don't know if that's valuable, and maybe it's kind of harsh what I wrote, but at the same time, I don't need to be sold my creativity back as a treatment modality to improve the outcome of my life. So why does anyone else need that? Why can't we step out of it all? Why can't we transcend? Why can't we put these scientists who are trying to probe us out of business? I just had a big insight while listening to this last part that I was editing. And I can't remember it exactly, but the sense of it is that when we get acquainted with this creative energy, and then we're labeled with a mental illness and put into this system of believing that we're defective, we're mentally ill, seeing psychiatrists, that is all what's in front of us as our life. And this creative energy is trying to create more of our life. So when we're immersed in that, it's going to create more of that for us. Because the creativity doesn't have motivation, it doesn't have volition, it doesn't have a goal, it doesn't have reward and punishment. It creates with what is in front of it. Our ego is a projection that projects reward, punishment, accomplishment, goals, motivation. But creative energy is inert. It has no volition of itself but to create with that we put in front of us, or that is put in front of us. So when after that creative energy fizzles out and we're told we have this mental illness and we're thrust into that paradigm, when the creative energy does its ebb and flow as it does, it's a different biorhythm. Then if we're in the mental health system, when that energy comes again, it's going to create more of the mental health system for us, unless we can find a way to step out of that. By having the mental health system as our canvas of our life, it's going to create more of that. Because this creative energy does not discriminate. It creates with what is in front of us. It can only utilize what is part of our moments now. And then when I realized that, I was thinking to myself, holy shit, I gotta get out of this now. Because if I'm immersing myself in that again and working in it, that creative energy is going to create with that. But maybe I'm not in danger because I'm outside of it and I'm sort of dipping my toe back in, but I don't know. I don't think I'm in danger because seeing the tweet, I was able to create this email, and listening to it, maybe I'm speaking up in a way that people like me don't have the opportunity to, because if they do, then it's seen as a symptom of their mental illness. And who's going to listen anyway? So I don't know, I just had this insight about how we're put in this system, and then the creative energy is forced to create with that, and unfortunately creates more of that. When our life is made all about mental illness, nearly everything that happens in life can seem like it's about mental illness. I'm scheduled to do some work in peer support, but I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't go to those conferences. I change from morning to night. This morning I was saying, I don't know about my shift in peer support, but then I did enjoy my shift in peer support. So it wasn't that. I don't know. I really don't know. And then I was thinking too, as I was listening to myself saying, maybe I shouldn't read these tweets and say these things. Maybe I should be reading those tweets and saying things like that. I don't know about should and shouldn't, but since it's created so easily, without effort, it just happens. Maybe that's a sign that I could read these things and create some kind of alternate context or ways to think about it, or critique the way the scientists are probing at us. It's like they're trying to help us after they've kicked us down to the basement. And they're making money and getting all this money for research, when that money could go to help us directly. You could say, well, they could go towards self-direction. And the number one predictor of positive outcome is somebody being able to self-direct, to choose. So put the money into that if they want outcomes, not studying to create more treatment that's contrived and all this crap. Just ask us what we want and help us to move towards that. Ask us what we want to create as our life and use the creative energy for that, and not staying within the framework of the mental health system. Anyways, moving on. And the fact that we become so creative all of a sudden shows that there's new capacities and new potentials coming online. So yeah, I wanted to get that out of my system, and I'm learning that looking at anything like that provokes an unfolding of something meaningful for me, it's old meaning, and I want to move away from that. That's the reason why I don't watch TV, because there can be so many things in TV that will create this movement. And when that movement is created, I wrote that email, and then I had this other movement of wanting to share that on video. So it's this cumulative thing, and then that happens for numerous things throughout the day, like breathing coherence and learning something about breathing coherence. And I watched a bit of a talk on it, and it was interesting because they said that they recommend for women to use 8 breaths per minute. So an in and an out breath per minute. 8 of those. And for men, because their lungs are bigger, use 6. And the slowest breaths per minute rate they have on the app is 4 breaths per minute. And that's what I use. If I do any faster, if I do 5 or 6, the coherence doesn't happen nearly as good. And when I was first using the app, it was really hard for me to get into coherence until I changed the breathing rate down to the slowest possible, which is 4 breaths per minute. And my breathing rate is very slow in general because I probably efficiently exchange oxygen or something, who knows. But so yeah, that's interesting. And And I did a muse session last night, and it was interesting because it said my brain was the most active ever. And it might have been because I had my heater running, and I'm finding that any sounds that are present, my brain definitely picks them up. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's like, oh, I'm distracted. I'm responding to what's actually there. If there's a sound there, my brain is listening and hears it, and I don't choose to hear it or not. I can't help but hear it because I'm not so narrowed in. I don't have my focused attention, and I've talked about this a lot. It's not about focusing one's attention at all. So it's choiceless awareness, like Krishnamurti says. If something is around, the brain will choicelessly flow with it. So yeah, I don't know why my brain was so active, but I think it was the sound of the heater being on. Not sure. So I don't know why I was so calm that time, and I don't know why I was so active later that day. But subjectively, even though it said my brain was really active, I actually felt quite blissed out because I had done 10 minutes of breathing coherence, and then I was doing the muse. So maybe the blissed out state is an active state. The brain is really energetic and doing something. It's hard to say. I will need to keep exploring. And these are the things that I prefer to utilize energy to explore, as opposed to looking at one silly tweet about a silly study and then writing an email that says, you guys don't get it at all. And the trouble is, we as people who are labeled with bipolar, we don't get it either, for the most part. But we can figure it out, and we can figure it out in our own life faster than science is ever going to help us figure out, because they take 20 years to bring anything that they find to us. So it's 20 years behind. So where I'm at right now, having transcended, is probably 20 years to make that the thing that usually happens for people. I just noticed now I can interject directly through iMovie. And I've been doing this for over a year. That's crazy. But I wanted to say that since we're not using science, we can figure this out and make it happen for us for real a lot faster. We can make it happen in several months when we learn about this and move into this. So the more people that do that, it's not going to take us 20 years. That would be if we were utilizing the scientific process. But we're using the creative Gaiantific Gaia biorhythm, the Gaia rhythm, to figure it out in our own subjective, objective life. In 20 years, people will figure it out for themselves and together, and we'll be co-creating and fulfilling our unique function, our unique neurotribal function in this world. We will have co-created that. We don't know what that function is. And I had an insight the other day that told me that this creative algorithm that we're in touch with for a certain percentage of the time when we get labeled with a mental illness called bipolar disorder is creative. And this creative algorithm is actually creating the new way of being in the brain. And we're co-creating with it. It's trying to figure it out. It tries something for a while and it seemingly fails, and the brain learns. And then it sort of peters out for a while, and then it tries again, and then it tries again. The brain is trying to create a new operating system. And it's not that the brain even knows what that is. It's trying to create that and create it in enough people, and then we collaborate enough to bring that online for more people to operate as, once it's been created, because it hasn't even been created yet. So it needs to be created and integrated. So that creative energy is trying to create a new operating system and algorithm of the brain. And we co-create it by participating with the energy. And that's the other thing I learned about the coherence breathing. I did it sitting in just a wooden dining chair, and I was doing the breathing rate at 4 breaths per minute, and I wasn't really getting into coherence. But then what I did was I was kind of sitting like this, and I shifted back so my shoulder blades were were back and sort of back with the chair just a little bit, so I wasn't slouched. And it wasn't much. It was like the difference between this and just sort of rotating my shoulders back. And then I was in coherence, no problem. So I did a course called Body Awakening Method by Carol Maureen Friesen years ago, and she talks about posture and the importance of that. And so that shift in my body posture and then being able to breathe coherently, we don't know when we're breathing coherently. We may do it sometimes throughout the day, but what I learned from that is that posture is very important. So maybe if I have the right posture during the day, I'm breathing coherently 50 to 80% of the time without using the app to double check, because I did the little shift and then I was in coherence easily. Because I noticed after that it didn't matter as much if I even followed the breath rate. I was breathing even more slowly. I sort of want to ask them, well, can you make it down to 2 breaths per minute for people who can breathe that slowly sometimes? So they say that breathing coherently in this rhythmic rate is what helps to send the right electrical nutrition to the brain. Well, it seems like if we don't have the right posture, if our spine isn't in the right alignment, the right electrical nutrition isn't going to the brain either. And then when I realized that, I sort of saw some of the theory behind chiropractics. Not saying that's it for sure, but having the spine in alignment, we can breathe better and send the right electricity to the brain. And I'm not a chiropractor. I'm just making an educated guess, making a little hypothesis from my own experiment with this. So map consciousness is adjusting us towards creativity. It's a creative algorithm. And so yeah, I wanted to get that out of my system, and maybe I'll go through and erase some of those things, or maybe I'll wait till November 6th. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I'm going to frame all of this next phase of things, because I'm not even sure if I want to frame it as something for people with a so-called mental illness. Because perhaps if I frame it for creative people or people who identify as highly sensitive or something, and start this dialogue with people that maybe aren't in the basement of things, then as we network together, we can come back and help the others together. Because I feel like we need to have more of us together to really go back and reach out to those who are wanting to transcend, and then from there we can reach back and help those who might not be aware that they can transcend, and see if they want to. If they don't, that's okay. I sure wanted to. So yeah, I'm feeling a lot of energy. I'm feeling the sense of what I was talking about on the ferry ride, of this intensity that feels kind of like fight or flight, but it's not. It feels like this needs to happen now. Not any particular thing, but whatever it is that is arising, there's this urgency behind it. There's this feeling, and I would maybe call it passion, but not a particular passion. So I'm wondering about that. Good night. See you tomorrow. It's a bit of a milestone day. I know I said goodnight and it's getting late, but there's one other thing that I realized I want to say to myself. related to this study that I was talking about, how it's saying that we're willing to work harder for rewards. And I was seeing how I've utilized this creative energy with myself to create a process of self-dialogue, which has helped me co-create my way out of the system that was imprisoning me. And isn't that what the energy is trying to do? But it's not a reward per se. It's trying to get out of prison. I don't think a prisoner that's trying to get out of prison thinks that's a reward. They're just trying to get out of something that they're trapped in. And I was also thinking about how I've been doing this for over a year, and there's no reward for me, but it has created something, that's for sure. But I had no idea what it was going to create. I participated in the co-creative process, and it co-created something. But there was no rewards for me along the way in creating this. If there is any reward, the reward is that now I'm able to live my life as I want, without treatments imposed on me. And if people were able to utilize their creative energy, they would likely create their way out of prison. But we're allowed to be sold back our creativity to stay creative within the prison, within treatment. And the process that I somehow participated with by creating these dialogues on video, if there is any reward, it'll be to show people like me the way out of the system that would probe us, study us, treat us, and tell us that we'll be in it forever, tell us that we have to take medications for life, etc., etc., etc. All the early hypnotizing that goes on. So we can live a life beyond all of that. And I've worked hard, for sure. I've worked hard to create my way out of it. And my biggest reward will be if anyone else, by virtue of the process that I've harvested, can do the same and avoid having clinicians come at them one day, 20 years from now, saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to help you with your creativity. When for those 20 years, if we're really with our creativity, we will create our way out of prison. We'll create our way out of the prison that science has created for us, and that science continues to fund more science to play with us, really. So I've been creating just to create, and it's innately fulfilling within itself. I don't even know what I'm going to say the next sentence half the time. How would I be projecting some kind of reward for that? Well, likely tomorrow, this intense energy of PMS. I won't even say that. I won't even blame it on something. I'll just say this needs to be said. That's all there is to it. Happy 16 weeks off meds. That is the milestone day today. That is the celebration. So yesterday I went to Valley Village and grabbed a couple of very versatile accessories. Halloween's coming up, but I never really dress up for Halloween. But since Halloween's coming up, they have such a selection. It was crazy. So I grabbed a few things that are really versatile, that could come in handy for being crazy happy, for acting like a crazy person, for wondering what a manic would do. A manic would dress up like a rainbow and jump on a trampoline on a beach. Today I'm going to jump on the trampoline by myself to celebrate. And I think I did a pretty good job at selecting what I was looking for. celebration. I like these wings because they're really malleable. There's those wings out there that are hard. So this is advice when you're putting together your magical backpack and your alter ego transconscious, moving to embody your mania and that celebration of life together. And these are great wings. And then I got some of these, and of course I got the rainbow tutu, and I got this wig, and I also got, as you saw, the rainbow unitard. It's a little bit big in the hips, but who can resist a rainbow unitard? So I have 2 costumes, and I might wear the rainbow unitard to Boney M on Monday. And then I noticed that I accidentally bought 2 sets of wings, and I don't know if I got charged for that, probably. And I didn't notice until I took both of them off the packaging. So I think it might be a sign that I'm looking for a wing woman. And perhaps the person I'm going to Boney M with will want to wear the second set of wings. But I'm also wondering if I could be playful and go out and look for someone who wants to be magic with me. And when they want to be magic with me and share that magic, then I'll give them the set of wings. So this would be really fun to make some sandwiches for people that are hungry and then go and give them out looking like a rainbow. To make it fun, because I did spend $100 on this stuff. This was $11, the wings were like $15, these were $5. I got a mask thing too that is kind of fun, and then the tutu, and I ended up buying 2 wings, and I guess I paid for both. I didn't realize I was carrying 2 sets of wings. So I'm happy that it all fits. The unitard is a little big in the hip, but I think it just makes it look funny. And so I'll keep it all. And so I spent $100, and since I did that, I'm going to put $100 into the crazy, magical, altruistic fund. Because if I spend $100 on silly and happy stuff for myself and to spread that, then I also need to spread the basics like food. That's how I feel right now, at least. So I'll find a way to do that. And it's sort of like a 1-for-1 program. If I spend $1 on myself, something fun for myself, then I also want to spend $1 on something for someone else. I say that now, and I'm about to purchase a new iPhone, which is $1,500. But I don't know if that's just for myself. It's not really. Excuses. So yeah, this is getting comfortable with my magic. I think I need some pink eyebrows, and I think I need more makeup to pull this off. And it's not about looking hypersexual. It's actually about fun and playfulness and rainbow and all the colors, and that's wonderful. Though I'm sure it'll be misinterpreted, but that's fine. This is also about transformation into my artist self, playfulness, having other ways of acting. This changes my epigesturetic matrix. This changes the way people epigesture towards me just by doing this. And then that's why I feel it's also important to wear clothes that we feel good in, put energy and attention into our appearance, because it changes the way people respond to us. And we can play with that. We can make it playful as opposed to addicted to having the latest trend or whatever. Why aren't we making our form a work of art and a work of play? We think that art is about painting on a canvas. Well, why don't we use the canvas of ourselves? And I guess people do. They get a lot of tattoos and things. And I am thinking of getting a tattoo. I don't really want one. I remember when I was in the psych ward, trapped in there, April 2016, I drew all over my arms with regular pen, but I was writing down words because I couldn't remember who I was or why I was here. So I was writing down like love and beauty and I don't even know what. Too bad I didn't take a picture. And then I washed it off, but I was really, it felt like that movie, I think it's called Memento, where he like puts stuff all over his body because he can't remember anything every day. And I feel like that too sometimes. Like I'll have my calendar, my iCal full of what I need to do. When it gets too full, I take out things that aren't that important to do and put it on a back burner type list. But then I forget about all those back burner items and I forget about the ones that are even in my calendar. So getting that private in bed plugin, I'd forgotten about that. I was going to put all the videos on through private in bed so that way it can be scheduled. So if something happens and I'm not around, it will eventually get out there. It's like a little insurance policy, but I kind of forget. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be working on that. I've said supposed to a couple times lately. I don't know why, but I mean, that's something I'm working on. And needing to write those two things, needing to write that business application. I'm reading a book for that business course called The E-Myth Revisited. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, what am I doing? I don't even know. So yeah. So this morning I did 10 minutes of coherence breathing and that was pretty good. And last night I woke up at 1:30 because I had to pee. And when I got back in bed, I actually felt some fear. I felt some subtle memes of wondering if I'm really here now, wondering if I'm actually on this path of moving towards mastering my mania, mastering mental health, embodying my mania, trans consciousness embodied, or if I'm kidding myself. And I was confused, and then there was some fear, and then there was some subtle memes of she went off her meds and did something really bad, and it's almost like these thought forms are trying to reattach to my brain and to scare me. And I was watching that, and my body responded with a little bit of fear, but not majorly like it has in the past. It was almost like I was witnessing these thought forms trying to come into play in my system. Some ones that would make sense for me to believe or to think are possible. And I watched my body literally like reject them, like fight them off, like the herd immunity I've talked about with myself. I've heard myself say so many things, and I'm embodying, moving towards unfolding and manifesting so many of those. But then I feel, especially after yesterday, I was PMSing, I read that and wrote that really critical thing about that creativity study, and I was feeling good during the day, and I was celebrating in the morning. So it's like being embodied all over the map of experiences and gestures and so-called feelings. I wouldn't call them feelings, they're more like energies. So it's all over this epigesturetic and energetic map. And that's something new. I've never put that energetic part in. But I feel like we move according to feelings, but it's more these energies and being aware. So since I was all over this matrix and map of energies and gestures yesterday, I feel like that's sometimes when I'm vulnerable to fear trying to come in, because I'm at the brink, at the very edge of how powerfully I'm willing to speak. Because a lot of times I say maybe and oh, and I create thousands of memes of context. So to speak powerfully on one, it puts me further along that possibility line. And when that happens, there can be some retraction, which feels like so-called fear, because it's this ebb back. And back forward, where is that? I don't know. But it's like this energy. There was a lot of energy in the body to speak in that way, and then it sort of fizzles out. The energy comes and goes and flows and goes into different parts of the brain and body. So I was thinking about yesterday. And partly when I was in bed, and maybe as I was falling asleep, I was wondering, because I said that thing about how when I worked in mental health, I started to create with that energy and create more of that for myself by being more a part of that. That's what got augmented as my reality, because the creative energy will augment reality. It will augment whatever reality one is moving in. And so when one is moving in a creative, manic, crazy trajectory, it augments that to the point that we've practically created our own reality to the exclusion of others. And there are other people who are in that augmented actuality, but it kind of screws up the collective. So we have to retreat back for the sake of everyone. But if we don't go too far into any particular one, because going too far into a particular one is choosing to go into that direction, which is an act of will, which messes with creativity. So it messes with the natural Gaiac creativity. It turns it into egoic creativity when we get mixed up with the ego. So I was thinking about how, even looking at a tweet about mental health, I can write a lot or see a lot in that. And I'm not sure what that is, but I was thinking about how before I worked in mental health, the first 3.5 years of my journey after being labeled, I was always laughing, making fun of myself. Then I got a job at a medical clinic, and I was always happy and loving and caring and joking with people and smiling. And I worked with someone really fun. So it was all about fun and laughter. And the clinic was about really caring for people and being loving. And so I was seeing that that's what was augmented. That creative energy was likely there, but it was creating with this love energy that was a part of the entire situation and manifested gesturetic matrix, the actuality, the significance that was love in the whole structure of the place was then congruent with epi gesturing and gesturing as love and being caring and smiling and happy. Whereas I can look at one tweet, which is not something actual in manifest reality, but it's on a screen, and produce all this abstract words and blah, 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 that feels more like passionate anger or criticism or pointing things out. And there's a place for that for sure, but I was wondering, where can I be love? And I don't think I've really said the word love, but I was thinking about living with family and being around some little kids and how beautiful and loving they are, and witnessing that, and that grows my relationship and connection with them, and that's love. And being in the forest and nature, but then this reaction to all this abstraction of mental health, I don't know if it is. And I could do that forever, but if I put myself in that creative energy is going to see something, and it's going to continue to create with that. And I'm going back to something I said to myself is, what do we put in front of us? And I'm putting mental health in front of me again. And I feel like I can't help it in a way. I feel like I want to help my neuro tribe. And I do want to set that November 6th day of not putting that in front of me as much, because I calculated, and up from now, so about 6 weeks, there are 15 days that I'll be participating in mental health stuff. And that's quite a lot. That's a big percentage. So I want to let that go. And plus that could contribute to this all-overness of energy, because I could be in the love space, but then I go into mental health and I'm feeling like, ugh. And even today, this morning, it sort of arose in my mind that there's this really good peer program where I am, and peers work full-time, and they work with people who aren't connected to the system to help them connect up to the system. So these people are likely homeless, or they don't have any psychiatrist or clinician or anything like that. And there's quite a few full-time peers to help these people who have no access to services access services. And it arose in my mind, it just dawned on me that this is one of the only places where there's full-time peers and there's so much access to peers. And it's because people aren't connected to the system yet. So it's a way to use peers to coax people into getting connected up with services. And once they are, and if they're homeless or addicted to something or whatever, they're likely going to end up on some kind of pharmaceutical. And I'm not saying it's all about that. I'm just saying the system is willing to pay more peers and have a full peer program of peers working full time when it is that they can rake people who are not connected to the system into the system. And one could say, well, they really want people to get help and everything. But I don't know. I just felt it was this coercion because they don't have all those peers like that. When people are already connected up, they don't say, well, we want you to get so much better, so we're going to help you by giving you a peer support worker. People get peer support workers in order to get coaxed into the system. And I really doubt that they're trying to set it up that way. And I don't know if I wanted to talk about that on my celebration day, but it came into my mind and I was thinking, God. And I don't know if that's true, but it just seems a little fishy to me. So yeah, I want to set people free of all of it, not work keeping people in the mental health system, and yeah, to set people free. And since I had that little fear thingamajig happen, I'm going to go to the park today, make some juice, be embodied. I have a lot on my to-do list today, and if I can do those things, then I can whatever. Happy 16 weeks off meds. Today is definitely walk in the park day, as I didn't get a chance to yesterday because I was working, and I'm wearing my earthing shoe attachment. This rubber connects to the earth, and then this string connects to my skin, and it's grounded. And I have an earthing sheet and I have an earthing mat. So it seems like by virtue of the gestures I make and some of the things that I buy that I value being connected to the earth. So Mother Earth knows that I'm here in the most direct way, through contact. After I made videos this morning with the magical costume that I bought, after I realized that there's an upcoming barbecue, this big community barbecue, and I could wear some of that and hang out with the kids. And I only thought of that idea because of how I bought that. So as soon as I bought it and tried it on, I realized that it has many applications. And this is probably the opposite of marketing, where people buy things and then realize they're never going to use them because they bought the hype. Whereas when we're creative with what we buy and creative in the way we live, then whatever we buy, we will be more creative with. And I remember creating a word the very first time I was in map consciousness, amplify, which is sometimes we buy things that will amplify our creativity, or we buy something cheap and it becomes really useful and it helps us be more creative. so we can watch out for things that are helpful to amplify instead of things that end up on the shelf and don't get used. But I also have my 2-year rule where sometimes I buy stuff and I don't use it, but 2 years later I'm like, aha, I need this. And then I have it, and I also realize that that's what I need because I did buy it before. And my pants are still really loose on me. I've been eating like a pig since I donated blood and not gaining any weight really, I don't think. And this morning I started continuing to work on a brochure that I started to make. And I used one of the templates in Pages and then added my own photos in the spots where there were photos. And then today I changed the color of all the font to be different colors. And then I started on the first side of the brochure and I put some of the things that are those movements I talked about, like homeless for homelessness and heart on and laughter matters, blah blah blah, all those things. Because I was thinking about if I get creative with when I feel like creating words around the structure or the scaffolding I'm putting together. If I do it as something creative, then it's something new and I won't make different documents about it, but creative things like a brochure or a poster or creative marketing around it, I guess, because it's about inviting people into this universe, which is creating a new universe, a different scaffolding than the one we've been given in terms of the mental health system and all the context that goes around that. Creating a new context, creating a new function for our lives, which could be something like living more according to meaning and blah blah blah. Maybe I'll print it off and share what I've created so far with that. So that might be a way to help me think about the structure that I'm creating, is to create these little businessy type documents to go along with this application I have to do, and then I'd have to create a business plan. But if I create the marketing first, maybe that'll make the business plan easier to create. Maybe this is, I'm just seeing this now, a good way to do things is create the marketing first, see how it feels and everything, and then create the plan around that. Because I'm not even sure how much I like supporting people, but it could be fun to build a scaffolding, which I'm doing, sharing as my life, and then inviting people to co-create that structure and live in that and create a new world for us to live in, and that's in alignment with our new functionalities. Because I was clued into that listening to Jamie Wheel talk about how some people do so bad on IQ tests, but when they're given the same test with a different structure to write it out and things, they do 40% better. So if we have a different structure to live out our lives, we could do 40% better, maybe even more. Maybe we could do 40% better functioning than what is considered the best functioning out there right now. But it's a different operating system altogether. That's my hypothesis. If we can't work mundane 9-to-5 jobs and that sort of structure, well, what sort of structure can we work harder in, like that creativity study was saying? I've been working very hard in my own structure, doing the self-dialogue, living my dream trip, doing another trip, designing other things, now starting to think of a possible business. And I feel like I've been functioning very well, but it's not one that's getting me any kind of monetary reward or all these rewards that of status or anything like that. I'm not getting any of those societal rewards, but I'm working for something for sure. And I don't think it's rewarding separate from being with life. And I had an insight this morning about, it was more like a download that just said, there is a living order and a mechanical order. And sharing or spending attention on life augments the life capacity of the human brain, the capacity to meet life. And that's the only place there's any power in meeting actuality. And then there's a mechanical order of thought which has taken over in order to build this world. But we now need to get reacquainted with this life algorithm. We don't need to grow in structure and economic growth and all of that. We need to grow in meaning and seeing life and understanding what it's all about with our own eyes and hearts, and not needing 10 years of education to understand one tiny little segment of life and then utilizing that to project a pattern in which we live and live such a partial life and then wonder where the meaning of life is. So yeah, it's not about time. When we're curious about life, life is curious about us back. And it helps us. Life affirming responds to life affirming. It can't respond to something that's not life. So I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but I'm thinking that an hour in the forest with life could be like 80% energy or something that makes it so we have more time or feel like we do have more time or something. I'm not sure, but... And also when one is in this living algorithm, one doesn't have to do anything because one is one with the movement of life. So one is moving with the movement of life. There's no doing separate from that. So then when one is in nature or something, one is more easily moving with the movement of life, and that helps to create more of this moving with the movement of life, which is flow. And flow feels effortless. And where the feeling of effort comes is from feeling, or from the personal I, emotions. Emoting and then wanting to stop that emotion or get more of a certain emotion, thus projecting a pattern that we feel will get us more of that emotion. Hence, that's reward and punishment. So that's probably where the study gets that notion from. But there's a movement of life that isn't about reward and punishment, of personal emotions. This forest has nothing to do with my personal emotions. The catalyst is life meeting life. Life affirming, augmenting life, augmenting actuality. And I feel like this is where that sense of two worlds comes in. One world is this living order of moving with life and meaning, and it's always new. And the other is operating mechanically with thought. So one is insight and intelligence, the other is thought, mechanical, seeing our own projections, acting according to those, which isn't moving with life. It's moving with our conditioning, which is against life, and that's why it feels like effort. It's not necessarily against life, but it's not congruent. And I might do 2 laps of this trail today because it's going to be closed for 5 days on part of it because they're fixing a bridge. on my favorite trail. The forest looks so alive and magical. It's always new. I could walk in the same forest every day and it would feel so new. Last night I spent hours reading the book The E-Myth Revisited, and it got off to a slow start. Wasn't really loving the writing style of telling a particular story about a particular business, and my brain doesn't really resonate with stories that much. More with inspiring context. And then it got to that part, and it gives the example of McDonald's and goes on and on about it, as it's such a great franchise business, but look at all the destruction it causes in terms of health. And it's interesting because it talks about how the business itself is the product. So in the case of McDonald's, that business of McDonald's franchise is the product, and it's already put together, and it's called a turnkey operation because once the franchisee buys it and gets trained in it, if they stick to that, it will produce certain results. So I was extrapolating that to what my possible business is all about. It's not necessarily about, oh, I'm affiliated with this product or promoting this person's product by virtue of my lifestyle, but the whole lifestyle design. And it can't be exactly turnkey where somebody can replicate it exactly in their own life, because we're each a living system in different environments, but maybe this lifestyle design might create a 50% or so probability of creating and living the life of one's dreams after being labeled with a serious and persistent mental illness, which for us at this point is really good odds, because at this point right now it's guaranteed 25 years earlier death, and the rest of the life we do live, if we're 35 and we live till we're 60, those 25 years that we have left, and then minus the 25 years to live till 80 or whatever the heck, or 75, those years are going to totally suck. We're going to be numbed out, fat, eating junk food, drooling on ourselves. So it's not something as mechanical as buying a McDonald's franchise, but what I'm trying to say is this whole system or structure or format of being with life could create the opportunity for somebody to create their way out of the mental health system and being fated to be a chronic mental patient. And so it's taking the fact that we've been turned into big business for pharmaceutical companies and all the schools that are designed to take care of us, like psychiatry and psychiatric nursing and all of that, such a huge industry, and remove ourselves from that machinery, remove ourselves from being a cog, from being a product of that by virtue of taking and participating with its products. So by living a different life of getting in touch with certain things, then we can co-create our way out of that by removing it from our perceptual field. So in that way, we can become entrepreneurs of our own life. We're not mechanics or products or workers or whatever of this system that lives off of our illness, supposed illness and disability? What if we're able to co-create with our diverse abilities, our different abilities, create our functioning, and in that way create a new universe, really? I feel the more of us that do this, it will create this invisible web of consciousness in the morphogenetic field, that people will be able to tap into in order to avoid that downward spiral into being trapped in the mental health paradigm. Because once we're in the psych ward, they tell us it's for life, got to take this medication for life. They're indoctrinating us into a for life thing that we can make it so it's not for life. So can I mass produce a lifestyle design that allows us to avoid or create our way out of the mental health system? And part of that too would be if I co-create with other people and we create this creative respite or this trip or something, then passing on this neurotribe structure. So it's one thing for me to have a creative lifestyle design and move out of it, but it's another to say have a few co-creators and then we create a few different things and then more people can fit into this structure. Well, all of a sudden we've created a new universe for people. They're not stuck in the mental health universe. And by creating our lifestyle and making that a creative process, we're not living the death style of a slow increase of morbidity as we die 25 years earlier, fearing ourselves the whole time, managing ourselves. And they talk a little bit about how that franchise thing works because they have a franchise prototype where they test everything. Well, I am the lifestyle design prototype tester, and I've gotten this far by myself through talking with myself. And then inviting other people to explore this too. So what if we could have a 75% transformation rate and transform from mental patients to being people who are able to live and create their dreams? So I'll be sharing my transformation, and perhaps that will help facilitate transformation and others who are stuck in the same thing. It's sort of like how they say most small businesses fail and maybe 80% go under in the first year or something. Well, when we go into map consciousness, we become really creative with our lives and we fall out of that, and then we fall into the pharmaceutical trap. And a good percentage of us do. So instead of being in the business of creating our lives, we end up being the business of the mental health system. So can we create ourselves again as entrepreneurs and engineers of our lives like we started to do when we first went into map consciousness? And they hypnotized us into feeling like we're not that powerful. We were delusional. We don't have the power to create our lives. And being on medication removes most of that power. And the book introduced the idea of innovation being related to action, whereas creativity is more in ideas. And I didn't necessarily think of it that way, but I do like the word innovation and innovating my life and sharing that innovation with others. So Synchroversity will be the course that invites people to start exploring these ways that we've already been acquainted with, but start to move in those ways again. And this morning I woke up early and I was going to see a friend, so I got ready for the day, but then they couldn't meet up. So from about 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. I worked on typing everything up in a document in Dropbox paper that I had scribbled all over the application for this business class I'm going to take. And I'd written small, and it was all over the place, all over these pages, and I thought, wow, this will be interesting to get through. But I feel like I got it somewhat organized into some of the different categories that I want to talk about in the course. The trouble is, it's challenging to outline what I really feel this business is about. I feel it's a different way of doing business, which is producing a content supernova, releasing it, which synchronizes with the whole neuro tribe, or as many as possible, and then they start reawakening to their capacities and their visions as we share so many parts of it, and start co-creating it to the best of our abilities. It's calling people back to their creativity and their creative nature, and inviting everyone to work together. Even if we're not all connected and talking and everything, we're still working on this vision and not knowing what it's all about exactly. It's mysterious. So part of the business is learning about business, and I've talked about creating a structure so that when people want to co-create, we can co-create something. We can create an innovation. So it's one thing to invite dialogue and context creation, but then when we see something we can actually co-create together, if I have it in place that I have some kind of co-creative contract to make it legitimate, like we're actually doing something, and if we co-create something that makes some money or create some kind of flow or resource, then we have a way to funnel it into the next creative thing. And I really do feel like we have a lot of great ideas, and when we start communicating with each other, we'll be able to turn those creative ideas and visions into actual innovations, utilizing each other's skills and abilities and talents. So it's challenging because I don't really want to share the exact way I'm going about this with the business course people, so I'm framing it in terms of coaching, consulting, advocacy, and maybe I will keep it just that for a while, and then share the course and the content supernova. So the first part of the business launch could be the coaching, consulting, advocacy. The next part, the course, and then the part after that, the content supernova and the trip. And then finding a place to create the Synchroversity Dream Center, the creative respite where people can go and be that joyful, happy, and harvest their joy when they're in that space. And then if they fall out of that, not be pharmaceuticalized and pathologized, and have a psychologically safe space to be reconnected with one's transconscious altruist algorithm and away from the self, me thought past. And the lifestyle prototype will be the lifestyle I've designed, and that's going to start soon, because once I get my magical backpack, I can start putting the items in there. I've got a bit of a fun costume. I could then start to do some fun stuff with that, and I find that as I get certain items, then I get more ideas about what to do. And also getting the new iPhone in a month or so, and that's the phone that I want to create the course on. So until then, putting my ideas down and remembering that I don't have to put every single thing in from my self-dialogues. Whatever is alive now is fine. And I liked how the book said the system isn't something you bring to the business, it's something you derive by creating the business. So I have an idea of a system, But since I'm not sure of the language of business yet, the actual system of the business won't arise until I start creating that. So I like this idea of being able to transform the insights that I've had and this process I've undergone into a business, because I feel that we as creatives, as transconscious altruists, can create businesses with our energy, because otherwise we're going back to work in meaningless work, likely. Some of us will go back and find meaningful work for sure, but some of us will be creating new categories of work. There's new categories of work created every year, and we will be at the forefront of creating a lot of new categories and meanings and possibilities of work, which, if we understand entrepreneurship, we can translate that. So perhaps at the Creativity Respite, there would be some business stuff, so that way when people have these creative ideas, they can start businesses with it. And then all of a sudden it doesn't seem like crazy, out there, wild, grandiose thinking, but it's translated into something innovative right away. And then also we have the freedom to move about, and we will have created something valuable for the world with that energy. So I can see that the need to create lifestyle design, which goes with entrepreneurship, because otherwise we fall into the design of 9-to-5 society. And today I ordered one of Ricardo Semler's books, The 7-Day Weekend. He has some pretty radical business ideas that I think are in alignment with what I'm imagining. I can imagine people like us having a 7-day weekend, but being very creative entrepreneurs. And maybe having like a brilliant idea and learning how to share that with somebody who can create it, and we sell the idea for quite a bit of money, but we don't have to do anything. And that goes with the idea and meaning bank. And maybe there's 10 of us or 100 of us that create the idea and meaning bank, and then we share in the wealth of that. So there's a lot of possibilities, and that's why I need to learn the language of business. I'll be sharing a new manic creative operating system, one that doesn't get swallowed up by the mental health system. Mania as a proprietary way of living. And if we can figure out this operating system, we'll be in a new dimension of the human brain, because other people don't have access to this energy. So if we can learn how to create a structure, our new functioning, and derive this new system and way of living by living that way. So our business is really in creating a new way of living. And once we can start replicating the success of this way of living and operating, just like a franchise does, when they have a fast food restaurant that you can put one anywhere and it will operate, function, and create that which it's supposed to. Can we create a system where manic brains can be leveraged to create an exquisite universe? And can we prevent these transforming and mutating brains from getting lost in the mental health system, because that potential is potentially lost and at the very least put in a holding pattern? Can we transform our extraordinary experiences into being extraordinary beings, doing extraordinary things? I am the mass producible pre-production prototype product, which is the manic lifestyle. I want to create more life for all people that come into contact with the business. And the manic way of being is replicated by the universe. A lot of people go live with this manic algorithm, but since we don't get it, we get got by the pharmaceutical industry, we get bought by them, we get sold. And it's getting old. And the E-Myth book talks about how the interaction with customers is more important than what it sells. And they said something like, sometimes all it takes is a change in words, a change in gesture, and there's a different interaction with customers. Now imagine if a person who's in map consciousness gets received as a gifted genius creator. They'll move into a completely different life and trajectory than if they're met with being a crazy person. And this is my point. One small gesture, and we're in contact. We are in eternity. We are eternity. And there's 2 hummingbirds dancing overhead, which is a sign. Joy squared. The light of consciousness squared. I keep seeing something that's weird. Joy squared. Maybe it was my breath. I don't know what that was. And the book also asked, how does my business as a product need to work in order to not only attract customers, but employees that want to work there? And I feel like my self-dialogue will attract co-creators that want to work on this universe creation. And I saw another tweet on, send in your manic pupils. And for some reason it popped into my mind to send a picture of my bunghole and put on it using an app. Oops, I thought you said send in your manic poop holes. Because again, that could be used against us. Like, you tested as manic, so you have to go to the hospital. And then all of a sudden, the app calls the police on us and we get apprehended. Or give yourself this PRN, or you need a change of your medications or up them. So it'll just be used as another control mechanism. So yeah, send in your manic poop holes. The days are feeling really fabulously long. I worked a lot today, and now I'm at the park, and then I'll go home and I'll still have energy to write some emails I need to write, maybe start writing these other things I need to write. And tomorrow I'm going to see Boney M in concert, so that'll be fun. And on Wednesday I have a barbecue, and on Thursday I might go to a trampoline thing. So there's a good mix of fun right now. I gave away my peer support shift on Monday tomorrow, so then I don't have anything interfering with the concert. And a hummingbird just flew right by my head. Today or yesterday I saw 2 hummingbirds flying around each other like this, and then they landed on the ground. I've never seen them land on the ground. I didn't know their little leggies could hold them up on the ground. I thought maybe they're designed for hanging onto little branches only. So hopefully by the end of this week I can have those things written I said I would write, and also this business application done. And wait for the next bits of whatever to show up. The spider web's been driving around with me for days.